Good morning. I am Steve Weber, and I am the host of the American Gumption Morning Show. Welcome. Here at the American Gumption Morning Show, we showcase ordinary individuals living extraordinary lives. And the reason why we like the ordinary, extraordinary is that it's positive and it's uplifting. And we all believe here at the American Gumption Show that the world needs more encouragement, more positivity, and more enlightenment, more levity. The world's a dark place and we're trying to shed some light on it. And finally, the goal of the show is just to help those who are awakening awaken, and then help those awakened live their lives with gumption. So we want everybody to live their life with gumption. Alrighty, welcome to today's show. It's Friday, July 23rd, and I have a great guest. Good conversation coming up with Kimberly Palm. Kimberly joined us a couple of weeks ago. She is the author of the book Ascension 101, and we're going to dig into that today. We're going to talk about what is Ascension and why it's happening right now on Mother Earth. So that's what's going to happen in just a few minutes. Now, my monologue is going to be the 4 levels of awakening, and this is directly taken from Kimberly's book, or at least the 4 levels is, and I'll give my own interpretation of that and compare where I feel like I've been on my journey of awakening, spiritual evolution. So that's coming up in just one or two more minutes after I finish my introductions here. So let's see, today is Friday. Again, I said that, July 23rd, show number 207 if you're keeping track. Alrighty, next week I've got a couple of Sarahs coming up. On Tuesday, Sarah Johnson, and we're going to talk about building a website. This isn't what we normally talk about here on the American Gumption Show, but Sarah and I have worked together on projects. Her and her husband, Johnny, have a business, a website development company. They are heart-centered people, and we're going to talk about the technology and of building a website. So that's going to be a good conversation. Alrighty, I worked with Sarah and Johnny in the past and love and admire their work. Alrighty, on Friday, Sarah Sparks is going to join us. So I got Sarah Johnson on Tuesday, Sarah Sparks on Friday, and Sarah Sparks is going to talk about amplifying your inner wisdom, getting in touch with that, that truth, that knowing. That's what Kimberly and I are going to talk about today too. So we like this. We like getting in touch with our inner wisdom. So we're excited that Sarah Sparks will join us next Friday. Alrighty, and then we'll see how it goes, whether I do a show or 5 shows next week, or whether I do 3 or 4 shows. We'll just play it by ear. But Tuesday and Friday, we got the Sarah Johnson and Sarah Sparks. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and jump right back into the 4 levels of awakening, my monologue for today. And this is like a spiritual awakening. And again, these 4 levels come from Kimberly's book, but I'm going to put my own interpretation and spin and tell you where and how I've been on my journey evolving through those. So the 4 levels of awakening. Number 1, I'll just give you all 4 of them right away. Number 1 is a new awakened seeker of truth. Number 1 is a newly awakened seeker of truth. Someone who goes, okay, let's get this show going. We're ready. Number 2, a spiritually enlightened person, somebody who isn't now necessarily just like, starting out, but they feel like, okay, I'm figuring this out. I'm down with this. I'm down with this new way of living my life. Number 3 is a light worker, someone who's spreading the light and sharing the good news out and about there. And that's really the level that I feel like I'm at this point. So I'll tell you about that when I arrived there. And then finally, an accomplished spiritual teacher. Now, as I started the show, I had a little bit of a little dissonance in the sense that I was like, well, wait a minute, how can I talk about these things? I'm not a spiritual teacher, but most of the people who come on the show are spiritual teachers. And so I consider myself a student being here, and of course, spreading the light by sharing their wisdom. So that's real quickly, a newly awakened seeker of the truth, a spiritually enlightened person, a light worker, and then a accomplished spiritual teacher. Those are the 4 levels. So let's dive in on each one of those and just talk a little bit about it. Now, my awakening as number 1, a newly awakened seeker of the truth, really, I call that 2009. That was the year that I went, wait a minute, things here are not as they appear, and things are not as I've been told they were. Something is wrong here. This is not adding up any longer. And I kind of can look back on it and go, I knew this all along, but finally it kind of like whacks you on the head and go, wait a minute, this is crazy. So some things just don't add up. I knew things weren't adding up for years and years and years before 2009, but finally in 2009 it was like, okay, I gotta figure this out. I can't just go along pretending that everything's going to be okay, and that things that, like 1 + 1 = 12, just wasn't working any longer for me. So again, 2009 was my year. And really it was the year that I said, what is my truth? What is the truth here? So that was that beginning. And I think most people who are that number 1 newly awakened seeker of truth, they're basically they're trying to answer that one question. What is my truth? What really is the truth? And so anyway, a spiritually enlightened person, for me, it was 2014. And I just kind of came to this conclusion in the last couple of, weeks or months, where I finally dawned on me, like, oh, this is really when I felt like and really what it was when I decided that we're all connected. I knew I decided that back in 2014, but the realization that was the point where I went, okay, I am, I've gone from that newly seeking what the truth is to being what I would call now, or what Kimberly is defining as a spiritually enlightened person, is someone who, when I said, hey, we're all connected, we are all energy, there are no coincidences, everything is connected to everything else. And I had that deep inner knowing that was, that was it. So that was like kind of the moment when I went, oh my gosh, we're all connected. We're all connected. So, and again, it's like kind of a knowing, the first 5 years, 2009 through 2013, it was like kind of that exploring and like, is it this? Is it this? And then 2014, it was like, okay, we're all connected. I got this. I can, that was like that truth that became like a big neon sign blinking. Okay, we're all connected. There are no coincidences. We are all connected. There are no coincidences. All righty. So number 3 is a light worker. And for me, that came in 2018. And really, that was the moment when I went, you know what? Time to leave Montana. My work here in Montana is done. The reason why I came to Montana is now completed, and it's time to go back out into the world. And so it took me a full year and a half to really get everything organized so that I was able to leave. And then in October of 2019, I left Montana with the intention of living and working on the road for the next several years. I've been out back east temporarily, staying with family for the last year and a half plus. And the goal is by the end of this year to be out and about doing what is that, that original vision. But in 2018 was the moment when I went, I've got to get out of here. It's time for me to go. It's time for me to clean up all this stuff that I've accumulated, and it's time to go. So, and it really was a desire to share the truth with others who want to hear and learn from it. So a desire to teach the truth with others who want to hear. It's like, not like, for me, it's not about trying to prophesize or to, impose my thinking on others. It's more a matter of saying, okay, this is what I believe. And if you are interested in hearing it, then, and there's lots of people who are this community of people waking up and realizing that most of what we've lived our life through isn't necessarily true, what we were led to believe. And now we're awakening and we're searching for that truth. And so we're all sharing with each other. And the spirit of it is to, again, share the information with people who are ready and want to hear that. It's also kind of like so that light worker is also like where you go, I can't just sit back and watch any longer. It's time for me to go out there and do this. It's time for me to get out of the stands and go down on the field and start playing in the game. So for many, many years, you sat there passively watching. I sat there passively watching what was going on. And then all of a sudden it was like, okay, I got to get down there and I got to mix it up and I got to get involved and do this. So it's the analogy of are you sitting in the stands watching, or are you down on the field playing? So for me, becoming that light worker, as the moment when I went, okay, it's time for me to really get back on the field. And that's been evolving. That's been happening the last couple of years. This show is really all about that, right? So coming up on the 1-year anniversary in another 10 days or so. So that's really what this whole thing is all about. So, getting on the field, participating actively. And the last thing I'll say about being, in this phase, being a light worker, is that others can't knock you off your game. Your truth comes from within, and your truth no longer comes from, what other people are telling you, whether those other people were, your foundational learning that you received when you first incarnated, came into earth, your parents, your family, friends, the schooling. Today it's more like, people like government, media, big tech censoring us. So it's, the truth comes from source, whether you call it God, however you refer to that divine energy that connects all of us, you can't be knocked off your game. So there. All right. So finally, number four is an accomplished spiritual teacher. And so again, I don't view myself as being there. I don't see my role at this point as that. And I don't even know whether I'll ever get to that goal. But for now, I'm just happy to kind of share the wisdom of others who are what Kimberly refers to as an accomplished spiritual teacher. I don't view myself, like I said, as that today, but many of my guests are, here on the American Gumption Morning Show, they are accomplished spiritual teachers. And certainly Kimberly, she wrote the book Ascension 101, which we're going to hear from in just a minute. And they all have special powers. They have things like telepathy or channeling, clairvoyance, things that would have been called like sixth sense when I grew up, clairsentience, clairaudience, prophecy, levitation, instant manifestation. So these special skills are things that I aspire to learn. I don't feel like I have any control. I kind of get little glimpses of them here and there. I certainly have learned how to reconnect with my instinct and my inner knowing. But, having what we would call, channeling or those types of skills, telepathy, I don't feel like I've, really mastered those things at this point. So the last thing I want to say on this, and then we're going to get Kimberly on to join us, is we're all students. Again, this is my belief here. We are all students. So even the people who ascends through these different levels, you are constantly learning. It's a constant growth and learning thing. So, you never quite, you never are the master. And then the last thing I'll say is that there are no gurus. And so people doing this type of work and sharing this information, they don't aspire to be the guru. They don't want to be the one that like, hey, come follow me. I have all the answers. That's not the spirit of which this is intended. The spirit of it is that, hey, we're all on this journey together. We're all learning. We're all ascending. We're going to talk about that. Ascension 101. Kimberly's going to talk about it in just a minute. But no gurus. We don't put people up on, platforms or up on pedestals, because that's not the way we roll. We all have our own pedestal to stand on and spread and speak our truth, and we do it with the willingness that only those who are ready and wanting to hear it will come to us. So we're not trying to enforce and impose our will on others. All righty. So that's my monologue for the 4 levels of awakening or spiritual evolution. And those 4 levels, again, were provided by our guest, Kimberly Palm. So without further ado, let's go ahead and welcome Kimberly to the show. Palm, welcome back to the American Gumption Morning Show. Thank you for joining me this morning. How are you doing?
Thank you, Steve. I'm okay. I'm dealing with a lot of what we call Ascension symptoms right now, a lot of body pain, but I'm, doing my best to navigate all of it. My husband talked me into putting a salon paw patch on my knee that's bothering me. So I'm doing much better, I guess, because I've got this patch thing on my knee that's sending stuff into it, making it feel a little better.
So we're gonna get into your book, and your book is titled Ascension 101: A Roadmap for Your Soul. And I have so our first interview was a couple weeks ago, and we didn't really talk too much about Ascension 101 specifically, but we kind of gave the backstory of who you were and how you got to where you are. And then we said, hey, let's come back and let's really dig into Ascension 101: A Roadmap for Your Soul. And really what we're going to do is just sort of, if someone doesn't really understand what Ascension is, we're going to talk about that and explain that today. So, but you are mentioning about your knee, and I know that for people who are tuned into this sort of thing, apparently our sun has been flaring up and sending all kinds of energy. Before we get into Ascension 101, just tell people what's been going on from a energetic level from our sun here on planet Earth.
Yeah, thank you for asking. So there's two things going on. So first of all, the sun has been sending out these huge solar radiation bursts. And thank God above, or God, wherever God is all around us, actually, thank you, God, that the solar flares and bursts that have been happening, which are the most extreme that they've recorded in history, were headed out the backside of the sun, not the side that's facing Earth. Because if it would have come out the side that was facing Earth, it would have wiped out all the electrical grid on Earth and maybe even harmed and killed people. So it would have been very serious. But because it went out the other side, instead what it did is it still impacted us, but impacted us in a physiological manner. So a lot of people are having a lot of muscular skeletal pain. When I check in with all the other light workers and all my followers and just people on social media, they're having back pain, neck pain, joint pain, hand pain, foot pain, knee pain, all this. It's very muscular because it's affecting our physical body on that level. Then on top of it, you have what's called the Schumann resonance. And the Schumann resonance is the heartbeat of Earth. It's like the frequency of Earth, or the pulse of Earth. And it's off the charts right now. It's been just going crazy. And every time the Schumann resonance does a spike, it's like a roller coaster. People's bodies react to it on a physiological level. So you'll notice that you have maybe headaches, or you can't sleep at night, or you're having a lot of hot sweats, or you're having body aches and pains, or you just don't feel well. Maybe you feel off, you have low energy, just a lot of different things. And some of the people, it's kind of interesting because for me, everybody experiences this stuff different than other people. So like for me, I noticed that I'll have like a huge burst of energy the day that everybody else is having low energy, I will have like a burst of energy. But then the day before that, or the day after, I will have what everybody else is having. I have like either a delay or a precursor kind of a thing happen where it hits me like one day off of when it hits everybody else, which is kind of interesting. It's just the way it affects me. So for any of you out there that are experiencing things, I always give a disclaimer and say, go get it checked out with the doctor, make sure there's nothing serious wrong with you. But when you go to doctors, when it comes to Ascension symptoms, you go to a doctor and you say, oh, I'm having these weird headaches, and they run every test on the book in the books on you, and they shake their head and go, well, we don't know what's wrong with you. You can usually chalk that up to Ascension symptoms. So what was the term you used to describe the pulse of the Earth? That's called the Schumann resonance, and you can actually look it up. It's spelled SCHUMAN, and there may be an extra M in there, N in there, maybe MANN, but it's Schumann resonance. And there are people who follow this thing really, really closely. There's a channel called Your Everyday Lives, or Our Everyday Lives, on YouTube with Michael De La Rocca, and he's hardcore into this whole Schumann resonance thing. He does tons of videos on it, and on the solar stuff, and on the Ascension symptoms. He's really into that. And there's a whole bunch of other people, Vito Mucci, who wrote a famous book called Coffee with Consciousness. He is also known as the Starlight Shaman. He's out of New York. He is always on social media posting about the Schumann resonance and checking in with all his followers and saying, how are you feeling? How's everybody in the collective feeling? And you can go onto his page at any time, and it's spelled Vito and M-U-C, I think it's M-U-C-C-I or M-U-C-I, Vito Mucci, Italian name. If you follow him on Facebook, you will see his posts when there's Schumann resonance crazy stuff going on. He's really very scientifically into it. And he will ask people, how are you feeling? And you will literally see thousands of people responding on there saying, I'm having neck aches, I'm having headaches. Everybody is physiologically feeling this stuff. It's totally weird. It's totally weird because in the history of humanity, we've not had this happen before. This is a new thing because it's part of the Ascension. So it's not like something that has always happened and nobody knew about it. This is a very new thing. It just started happening since 2012, since we launched.
Is the Schumann resonance related to the solar flare that took place, or are they kind of independent of each other?
They're kind of independent, but then they can also be related too, because one can impact the other. So definitely. So they're kind of both. Yeah.
So I had heard all about the solar flare and the fact that it did happen on the opposite side of the sun that faces us. And I did know that that was a good thing that it went the other direction. Right. Even though it went the other direction, it's still, it
still impacts us. It's just not as horrible as it would have if it was on our side of the sun.
Yeah. So, and I personally, I haven't, I have kind of my routine. I've been in the last couple of years, and I've been trying to take pretty good care of myself in terms of my cycle of sleep and this and that. And so I have like weird patterns that go, but I don't know that I've tuned into that, but I'm appreciative of it and learning more all the time. So getting dialed in. So I didn't have any kind of massive craziness. It was Saturday night, I think, is when they said it was when it really impacted us. So, all right, well, that's a good way to, tease what we're going to talk about. So you wrote the book. You wrote the book called Ascension 101, a roadmap for your soul, and people can go to Amazon and purchase it. Since our last interview, I purchased it, and I haven't read the entire thing, but I certainly read enough to get us into our conversation, because really all we're going to talk about today is what is Ascension, pretending that someone doesn't even know what it's all about. So how do you want to go ahead and, describe what Ascension is? If someone's like, maybe from a religious point of view, we go, Ascension, oh, was that like when Christ ascended up into heaven? Is that what's going to happen to us? But no. Ascension 101 means for us humans.
So thank you, Steve. So the book, there's a whole chapter just on what it is. And so I'm going to try to paraphrase it. It's really hard to put it into just like a couple paragraphs or a couple of words, but I will do my best. Sure. So to simplify it as simple as I can, the thing that Christ did was he ascended into heaven, and that's a different kind of ascension. Okay. So there's different types. The word ascension can mean many different things. The type of ascension that we are talking about here is an event that occurs in a solar system every 26,000 years to enable all the souls in that solar system to go through this ascension process. So every soul that God creates goes through an ascension at some point in their soul journey. They have to, because it has to do with going to the next level. Because what happens is you enter into a lower level for the purpose of learning. So Earth is a big classroom. We're here to learn lessons, and that's why you have good and evil, and about that in the book, The Law of Opposites. But the reason you have bad and good and all these things, and hopefully in balance, which it hasn't been on because of, thanks to Satan and Lucifer, the balance has been off for 25,000 years. But you're supposed to have good and evil in balance, and you're supposed to go to a planet. Your soul is created by God in heaven. You go to a planet as a classroom to learn lessons. And you go to maybe a lower density planet, like in our case, we are third density planet. Third density is a consciousness. So density is a consciousness, dimension is a location. So like we reside in the third dimension, but that is not the density. The density is a level of energy, vibration, frequency, and consciousness. So humans originally 25,000 years ago, when Atlantean civilization was on Earth, there were all sorts of extraterrestrial beings from all over the galaxy who lived here in peace in the Atlantean civilization. There were also the original humans that were, just the original humans who were here. They all lived in peace, and they were higher density. They were fifth in density and higher individuals. They had 12-strand DNA. They were crystalline instead of carbon-based life forms. And what happened, and those are all people who had already been through ascensions per se. They had already been through an ascension. What happened is Satan or Lucifer rebelled. He took a third of the angels with him out of heaven, and he came here and he basically took our planet hostage. And he lowered the vibrational frequency of the earth. He created the fall of that civilization. He actually caused them to go into their ego and to become really bad and really misguided. And they nuked themselves. So they nuked the entire earth. It was nuked. And at that point, some of the Pleiadians and the Arcturians and Lyrans that were here, some of them went underground. Some of them went up in ships and went back to their home worlds, in Pleiades and some of these star systems. Some of them went to other places on the Earth where they were able to go underground temporarily or something and survive. And then the next civilization that sprung up was called Lemuria. And that was part of the Hawaiian Islands, was sort of the center of Lemuria. They destroyed that. And then what they did is they created humans. They messed with our DNA. They altered it so many times over. We have 22 other ET races that are in our DNA. They altered us over and over again. And they took us from a crystalline life form down to a carbon-based life form, and our DNA from 12-strand to 2-strand. The purpose of that is to create suffering and death. Okay. And to lower your vibration to third density. What is third density? It's fear. So the people who are really loving based density, which is 5 and higher, so 5D and higher, fifth density and higher consciousness, is a love-based frequency. Okay. And when you ascend, you go to that love-based, you're just fully that love-based frequency. And what happened is the civilization was destroyed, and then the people who were left here were turned into these third density fear-based people, and who get sick and die because the demons that are here, there's over 100 demons for each person on Earth that were planted here to destroy humanity. They feed off of fear and suffering and death and sickness and murder and rape and pillaging and all those violence and just suffering, just everything. They feed off of those energies, ego, narcissism, controlling, manipulation, all of the negative sides of your ego, they feed off of all that. And so they basically turned us into these fear-based, nasty human race is what they turned us into. And so every 26,000 years, a planet has a chance to go through this ascension. We are going through it right now. They also call it the Great Awakening. I'm sure you've seen it on all the different posts on Telegram and everywhere about the Great Awakening. You see it over and over. It's associated with Mr. T, our fearless leader. And so the Great Awakening and the Ascension are the same thing. That's literally the same thing. So everybody is waking up to the truth of what our situation has been in, and we're ascending. What does ascending mean? It means going from a third density fear-based consciousness to a fifth density love-based consciousness. So all of the people who are ready to become loving, compassionate, and Christ-like, everybody who wants to be like Jesus Christ, everybody who wants to be Christ-like is all ascending. The people who aren't ready to do that are leaving here in mass quantity through death. Okay. So they're all leaving here. So they're dying, and where are they going? Well, when you die, you go home to heaven, you get a life review of all the stupid things that you did. And then you get sent to another third density planet to live more lifetimes until you're ready to ascend, because every soul, the term where we go, when we go all, that is a serious thing, because every soul, we're a collective consciousness of individuals. So we're all connected to each other always, and to God. And so what happens is every single soul ascends. Every soul ascends. Nobody's left behind. We all ascend. It's just that we're all on different starting lines and finishing lines. We're on different timelines. So for example, if you're at the Olympics, you have 10 guys lined up from different countries. And at the end of the race, they've all ended in certain different spots, right? They're not all, not everybody all reaches the finish line at the same time. Exactly. Maybe a few of them do, but the rest of them are all at different places, right? If you were to mark where they landed at the ending when they called that race, they're all in a different place. And that's because every soul is on its own journey in its own time for what resonates with you and what is good for you, for your higher self. It's up to you, because God gave us free will and free choice, and we're sovereign beings. And so we get to make choices, good and bad. And so based on the choices you make, based on your thoughts, your belief systems, all of that, you're going to go through an ascension differently than I am. It's going to be a different process for you than how it is for me. But the end goal is all the same, which is going from a third density fear consciousness, which I talk about in the book. I break it all down. Third density, fourth density. Fourth density is love and unity to each other, like seeing that we're all connected and all that kind of stuff. And then for me, fifth density is what I call supernatural, because when you ascend, guess what happens? You get back all of our superpowers that were taken away from us. So back when Atlantis was here, people spoke telepathically, they levitated, they bilocated, they teleported themselves places, they saw the future, they knew who they were, like they had their memory of all their past lifetimes and who they were before they came there. When we were all created and Satan and Lucifer manipulated all of us, we had our memories wiped. We had our memory wiped. And part of that, we chose to do that as a learning process. So your soul chooses to go into that knowing you're going into that, because part of it is part of your learning. Okay. But here's the kicker. This was a kind of an experiment that was started, and we were supposed to go through this very temporarily, and we were supposed to ascend a long time ago, thousands of years ago. We were supposed to ascend, but we were hijacked by dark beings. First, we were hijacked by Satan and Lucifer and prevented from ascension, and then we were hijacked by the Draco Reptilian and the Orions, which are the Greys, and they came here 12,000 years ago, and they placed a matrix around the planet. That movie, The Matrix, that's a documentary. So all the humans who are here are being used as batteries for these evil entities, and they feed off of our energy. They feed off of our fear, our suffering, all of that. They feed off of us. When you die, you never get to go to heaven. Now you can, don't get me wrong, now you can. Up until December of 2019, there was a grid around the planet that would make it so that when you died and you passed away, you went to what Dante in his Inferno book called purgatory. So you went to false light, and then you were put back into what I call the wheel of samsara, which is a suffering contract where you get recycled over and over and over again into more suffering contracts. So you would come back and you'd get raped and pillaged over and over again, or you'd have poverty and you'd die of starvation, or you'd die of whatever, condition, and you wouldn't live very long and you had a horrible life. And they had humans, what I call human souls, that were stuck here for thousands and thousands of years, going through that over and over. So you're born, you die at age 10, or you die at age 20, you suffer, blah, blah, blah. You come back, you do it again and again and again and again. They had this grid around the planet. The planet itself has a consciousness. Mother Gaia has a consciousness. She was sending out an SOS signal. It was not getting out because it was being blocked by their matrix. On top of that, the galactics, who are in charge of protecting, we have protectors who protect this planet, kind of like Thor and those guys in that movie. It's similar. We have protectors who protect us, and they would send a signal out to see if everything was okay. And the signal would come back, nothing to see here, everything's okay. All right. So what happened is in 1940, whatever it was, when they blew up Nagasaki and Hiroshima, guess what that did? That sent this.
penetrated out.
It penetrated out and it sent the signal out, and all of the galactics looked at the Earth and went, what the F? What the heck happened? You know,
Something's
seriously.
going on.
Something's going on. We need to go look at that. They showed up here around 1950-ish or a little before that. And what we call the Galactic Federation, whatever you call that. And they tried to work with the governments. The governments would not work with them at that time. They refused to. Instead, the governments made agreements with the Greys, with the bad Orions, to kidnap and experiment on humans and do terrible things to us in exchange for technology. So
the governments were getting the technology, the advanced technology, and our governments agreed to trade humans.
Right. So what did they do? They kidnap us. You see thousands of people go missing in national parks every year. You see 900,000 children trafficked every year. You see women, men, adults. They take them and they send them off world and enslave them to do mining on other planets and all sorts of things. Sex slavery. They use them for sex. They use them for food. The reptilians actually eat humans. They've been eating humans for thousands of years on this planet. We're their cattle. We are their cattle farm. So when a human goes missing, they're basically food. They're gone. So that's been going on.
So let's just stop for a second. The idea is the Ascension. You gave a lot of great information there. I've heard most of what you said, like not understanding all of it. I'm just learning here. But the idea is that we have been living in this 3D consciousness, which is essentially fear and, like we're helpless. We're depending on external things to provide for us. And 5D is this loving kind of like, which everybody who's going through an awakening, people like, yourself, we talk about, hey, we got to put an end to this. We don't want this to continue. Love is clearly the answer. So we're going through this really unique, special time here on Earth because this major transition is taking place. Things happened just as recently, 2012, the Mayan calendar came to an end, and like they just didn't have any kind of information past that, and people weren't sure what was going to happen. And then you said you gave the date in 2019, so there is like major things happening right now, and the souls that chose to come to this planet at this time came specifically knowing that this was going to be an exciting time, and it's like happening right now in front of us. Is that correct?
Yeah. So basically everybody's waking up to the truth, and everybody's waking up to who they are. They're getting back their memories of who they were before they came here. In fact, when the ascension process is all complete, and I want to say around 2030, it'll be complete. Everybody will have their memories back of who they were before they came into that body, where they came from, their past lives. They'll have telepathy abilities. They'll be able to bilocate. They'll be able to time travel, all that kind of stuff again, because you can time travel through your pineal gland. Your pineal is actually a time travel machine. So there's all of that stuff you will have. You'll have all your superpower. I call them superpowers, but you'll have that all back. And that is why Christ said, you will do greater things than I. So people always ask what that means in the Bible when Christ said, you will do greater things. And he also said, men are like gods. That is because he was talking about when a man is fully ascended, they have all those power. They have the same powers he had. Why did he have those powers? Because he was fully ascended. He was a fully ascended being. When you fully ascend, you have all of your superpowers. You can walk on water. You can turn 3 loaves of bread into 500. You can do all that alchemy and all that stuff. When you have you can quickly manifest whatever you want. You can just create it and manifest it when you have your abilities back, when you've ascended.
Yeah, and you gave a nice list in there. Let me just share with the audience some of these psychic abilities that will come back to us in 5D: telepathy, channeling, clairvoyance, clairsentience, clairaudience, prophecy, levitation, instant manifestation, speaking light language, and speaking other new languages. These are all things that you mentioned in the book that, like, oh my gosh, this is why we chose to be here at this time going through this process. And so it's an exciting time. But your opening description, your couple of paragraphs, maybe slightly longer, you said some things that were not taught to us as children.
No.
The idea that there are galaxies of other people that are coming to us. Our government is finally, for the first time ever, putting out reports that say, oh yeah, there's been some unexplained things going on. But you're actually naming names of different types of beings that have come to this planet from other parts of the galaxy. And, one was 12,000 years ago, and, some were good, some were bad, and some put up the shield that blocked it all. This, if you think about well, how come there's pyramids there? How did they get there? And we were oh, well, we don't know. I mean, a bunch of people just lifted up these big rocks and put them there. And so there was things that don't make sense. The Bible obviously is a historical text. There are many historical texts that talk about these things. My belief is that it's not necessarily a word for word, factual description of what took place, but it's these lessons that people learned, and it's documenting these different things. So there's all these hints about our origins and about what we've gone through over time, and certainly the colony of Atlantis, or the civilization of Atlantis, which disappeared. Well, why did these things disappear? And there's different times that we know that people lived and then they were gone, and yet it's we're kind of taught the story of the monkey turning into a human being, and no,
that's not true.
Yeah. So anyway, I just wanted to I wanted to mention it, because when I first heard these things, I was like, this is crazy talk, and yet I've heard enough people talk about it. I love the just the clarity that you spoke of it, so we don't have to go into all of that, but I just wanted to acknowledge that you're viewing this very differently than the way I was trained, and probably the way you were trained. We talked in your last interview about the special powers and your ability to be clairvoyant and clairaudient, and so it's you're channeling this and you're connecting with other intelligent forms. Your ascension has already progressed in certain ways that gives you access ports, and I kind of feel them awakening in myself, and I know lots of other people have, and people have had near-death experiences that they describe that they go to the other side. So anyway, I just wanted to, we don't have to go down that road. I just wanted to for someone listening going, well, this is crazy talk. All right, sounds crazy, but let's just continue with it, because it's what many people believe is happening, and I want to choose to believe it.
Yeah, well, it's not crazy, because I have probably hundreds of people who I'm in contact with who are all psychic and clairvoyant, and they have all the same exact information I have exactly. Mm-hmm. And there's 1 billion people on the planet right now who know this. Mm-hmm. So you're going to say all 1 billion of them are crazy? Because there's over 1 billion people who know about what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about anything new and that nobody's ever heard before. There's 1 billion people who know this information. So, you're going to say 1 billion people are all nutty and ready for the crazy. You can't. Right.
So my awakening really began around 2008 or 2009. Really was the year. I've now since then have looked back, and I can see certain things that happened. Right in when I was 18 or 19, there was a particular weekend that I went away, and it was a part of a religious retreat, but it affected me, and it changed. It connected in a certain way. There was many things that I can kind of look back on now, but 2009, it was okay, things aren't working the way they're supposed to. There's got to be a different way. I'm in theory following the rules, and things aren't working out so good. And that was like where I went, okay, I don't trust anything I'm hearing, or like I started reconnecting with my own inner truth. And so you in your book, you described kind of 4 different phases of awakening. And I like to just share with people what they are, and then you can kind of maybe describe each one. And so, because people will fit into one of the categories. The first one would be newly awakened seeker of truth. And that was really where I was back in, 2009, 10. There was a couple of years that lasted. A spiritually enlightened person is number 2. A light worker is number 3. And an accomplished spiritual teacher would be number 4. So if you might take a few minutes and just sort of, for people listening, so that they can maybe, gauge where they fit in on that spectrum. And, they might know right off the bat, but maybe they don't.
Yeah. So the first stage would be people who just have a feeling like something's wrong, like what they're seeing happening in the world, that there's just something wrong. There's something going on. There's something off, and they start asking questions. Like I'll give you a good example. I was Catholic, for most of my life. And I have a lot of clients who are all just leaving the Catholic Church now. And they all say the same thing to me. They always felt there was something off about the Eucharist, the whole blood, drinking the blood of somebody and eating their body, that they always felt icky. Like I have several clients and friends too, who said that they couldn't even go up and do that because just the thought of it made them like sick, or there was something wrong with that. And they were always they had questions about it. And that's because that's a Luciferian sacrifice or Luciferian ceremony. It's a Luciferian ritual that they're doing. They're making everybody drink somebody's blood and eat their body, because that's what they do. They drink actual blood and eat bodies of babies and children. So it's they've been doing this for a long time. So there's that stage of awakening where you sit there and you start to question, is there really a God? Who am I really? How long am I going to live? Is there really a heaven? You start asking all these questions, which I answer all those questions in the book. Like, what is God? And what are you? What is your soul? What makes you up? I answer all those. What is your purpose? You start to ask questions like, what is my purpose? When you're in that phase, that's phase 1. When you're starting to ask the questions, something's wrong. Stage 2 would be people who are, they know a little bit more. They know more. They may even have a little bit of intuition. They're noticing things like synchronicities in their life and things happening. They know when the phone rings, who's calling them, like, oh, Bobby Sue's calling me. They know before the phone rings. They have like a lot of synchronicities, a lot of, things happen. Stage 3 is going to be people who they know they're very very, very psychic. They're very dialed in. They're, really, really, they ever since they were born, or maybe even a certain part of their life, they have telepathy, or they have, they can bend spoons. Like many years ago, I met a guy at a job that could actually bend spoons with his mind and move objects around, make things fly across the room with his mind and stuff like that. So maybe they have those kind of abilities, like me, where I was born with them. They can see the future. They're prophetic. They do all that. They know all that. And they know the truth of everything. Those people, like, they know what's really going on this planet. And then stage 4 would be my stage that I'm in, which is you've learned everything, you've mastered as much as you can. You're still a student. Like, we're all still students. So even if you're a teacher, you're still a student until your soul doesn't exist anymore, because your soul is always learning. It's always learning. I'm still learning. Like, I only know a tiny smidgen. Like, I know nothing. Like, the more I learn, the more I realize, the less I know. You know what I mean? There's so much information out there that I'm just learning, and I can never stop learning. I'm teaching things I've mastered. So there's specific things I've mastered over the course of my 55.5 years of being on the planet. I've mastered certain things, but there's so much more to learn. So I'm in stage 4, which is I'm here as a teacher and a healer. I heal people. I teach people. So there's that. So you have to look at yourself and say, so where am I? Am I in the question asking phase, where I'm going, what the heck's going on here? Am I in the kind of knowing stage 2, where there's things happening in my life and I realize I'm a little different, I'm a little special, and you're kind of seeing the truth. Are you in stage 3 where you're hardcore light worker? What is a light worker? That means that you're here shedding light on the darkness. You're here on social media, people like Michael Jaco, people like my friend Victoria Reynolds, who you and I both know, people like Tarot by Janine, people like Charlie Ward, all those kind of people, they're out there spreading truth. Wano Savin, all those kind of people, they're out there spreading truth.
Right.
They are light workers. So they're there shedding light on the darkness and getting the truth out. A light worker is also somebody who is holding space for other people. You can be just holding space. You can be praying for people. You can be a prayer warrior. You could be spreading light. Like when I get in my car, I'm driving around and I'm praying for everyone on the road. I ask God to bless every person who's driving down the road, that they may sink into their heart space and know God's unconditional love, and that they can connect with God and, that type of thing. I'm always praying for people because I always say that my biggest superpower is my power of prayer. I'm a big prayer warrior. So, so that's what light workers do. That's what they do.
Very good. I really appreciated your description, because as you were explaining it, Kimberly, I was like kind of, thinking a little bit about my own journey, and I know exactly when I kind of went into that phase 2 stage, and that was in 2014. And I had gone through, I had done about 5 years of this work, and all of a sudden I had this like deep knowing that we are all connected. And I had read quite a bit about that over there, but like one day it just hit me. It's like, we are all connected and there are no coincidences. And I ended up writing that down as a truth. And I ended up writing down 6 different core truths. And the other ones were kind of things that I had known all of my life. They were like foundational beliefs that were true, but they didn't shake me to the core, because I had already kind of known them all along, from that religious training. I was also raised in the Catholic upbringing and Catholic schools. And so, there was very much a set of rules that we were taught to believe. Well, it wasn't like all of it was, and it wasn't like there were untruths in all of it, but there were certain things that just didn't make sense. So anyway, I had these kind of core beliefs that I went through and believed. But when I went, we are all connected, when I knew, that's really when I moved into that second phase, what you called the, a spiritually enlightened person. And then as I was thinking about it, 2 years ago, I said, I have to leave Montana. I have to go back out into the world. I'm going to travel the country in an RV, and I'm going to meet people, and I'm going to tell happy stories, because our media is toxic and poison, and I didn't necessarily understand all of this other enlightening that was going on. I just knew that I was to go out there and meet people and create happy stories, because I just had a knowing that the world needed more happy stories. We didn't need more poison that was being spread by the mainstream media. So anyway, I don't ever see myself really being like, I see myself working in that third area for the next couple of years. Maybe I go into that fourth range, but at this point, it doesn't feel like teaching. Like I love being the student at this point. And so that's why I enjoy having people like you come on and having these conversations, because I think they're very important for us to have. So anyway, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. I'm just really grateful that you're having me on here to talk about this, because I'm not here talking about it, because I want fame or money or anything like that. I don't like any of those things. It's not my purpose. My purpose of why I showed up on this planet was to be of service to humanity and help everybody with this ascension. So the more people that I can help, I had somebody who's a really, really successful, well-known psychic medium. I'm not going to tell you who it was, because she may not want me to share that she said this to me, but she told me she was curious about the work I was doing. So she asked God or her team or whatever, how many people's lives that I've helped, people that I've benefited or healed or helped somehow. And the number was 180,000. 180,000. So the more of those kind of people, I had a thing where I had a person put me under hypnosis. This was back, I don't know how many years ago it was. I want to say 3-4 years ago, I had a person put me under hypnosis and take me into my future. She took me into my future. And I was in this like cave, and it had stacks of gold coins stacked up 20 feet high. And it's not that I want gold coins stacked up 20 feet high. I could care less about that. It's what those represented. It represented the treasures I'm building in heaven, because in the vision I had, I was in heaven. So I was in heaven, and I had like my own little like room or cave or whatever that had 20 feet tall things of gold all around me everywhere. And then it had this big urn. And I went to this urn and I looked in it, and it was full of these little papers, like millions of these little papers. And each little paper had a name of a person on it. And then she asked me, is there anyone there who's like, go sit, is there anywhere to sit down? And I'm like, yeah, there's a bench. And so I went and sat down. And then she said, is there anybody there with you? And I looked around, I didn't see anyone. And then somebody walks in, and it was Yeshua. It was my boss. He's my boss, and Christ. And he came and he sat down next to me, and he puts his arm around me, and he goes, good job, Kimberly, good job. Because the names on all those papers in the urn are all the millions of people whose lives that I help while I'm here, that I help. And so that's my treasure in heaven. My treasure in heaven is how many beings. It has nothing to do with money, money, as they say. It doesn't have anything to do with actual wealth. It has to do with building treasures in heaven, which is more of an etheric spiritual treasure. It's a spiritual treasure. So it's how many people can I help? I'm kind of in competition with myself, and my competition with myself is challenging myself to see how many people can I help before I leave here.
Well, you're helping me, and I think you're helping anybody who's listening today. I have one line or one thing from your book that I just would like to share, and maybe we'll use that to kind of close out on this conversation. And it's not relying on other people's systems, religions, schools, media, or societies for discovering our truth. Learning to let go of the need for other people to validate what is our truth, and really learning to connect through that, those
through
tools
source
that are that we've forgotten how to use, reactivating those tools so that we can know our own truth right in our heart. I mean, I think that's what Ascension is all about.
Yeah, it's about that. It's also about being held accountable for your behavior, because throughout time you would get this karma thing, or you would do all kinds of bad things and nothing would happen, other than you get recycled over and over again. Right now, Ascension has to do with, we all have to step into accountability from this moment forward, because the universe will not allow you to be shitty.
Whoops. With that, Kimberly just disappeared. I don't know whether she'll come back or not, but she dropped out right when she said that we have to be on our best behavior, and it can't be misbehaving any longer. There she is. She's back in there.
It just went, my computer just went out on me, but I don't know if I told you that my computer was taken out by the dark side several days ago, or like a week ago, and I had it in the repair shop all week being repaired. They took out my computer. My hard drive was completely kaputted, and the whole night, and all my files are gone. They're just gone. So now I'm just using this computer just to do these videos and keep in touch. But thank God I had them backed up on an external hard drive, or I'd be SOL. So anyways, I lost track of what I was saying because I was taken off. So
you were saying that we need to take responsibility.
You have to take responsibility for everything that comes out of your mouth. So here's what I need to tell people. In order to ascend, you have to be a loving, kind, compassionate, forgiving person. So always think, what would Jesus do? Okay, right. You have to be Christ-like. You can't call yourself a Christian if you're going and beating your wife, cheating on your wife, beating your dog, beating your kids, running around swearing at people, being mean, being competitive, being an ego, being a narcissist, being nasty, hateful, ruthless, raping, killing, pillaging, stealing. None of those things will get you into heaven, and none of those things will get you into ascension. Okay. And I shouldn't say they won't get you into heaven. You'll still go to heaven, but you'll get slapped on the wrist and you'll have to pay a fine for it, basically.
Right.
So you're going to be held accountable for everything that comes out of your mouth from this point forward. This was going back to when this ascension got kicked off, which was December 21st of 2020. We got pushed into what is called the new age of Aquarius. So effective as of that moment now, every little thing that you say and do, it's being recorded in the Akashic records, and it will never be, you can't erase that. That's there forever as long as your soul exists. So no matter how much atonement you do for your sins, how many animals you sacrifice or whatever to atone for your sins, how many times you go to church and you pay money to be forgiven for your sins, whatever it is that you're doing, or saying sorry, you're going to be held accountable. If you do nasty things, you will be held accountable, and there is a price you will pay. What that is unique to each person, and it's between you and God to figure that out, what that's going to be. There are angel tribunals that will figure that out for you. And in most cases, people who are not very nice will be sent to third density planet somewhere else, and they will have to redo this whole thing for 25,000 more years until they get to ascend again. Actually, 26,000. They'll have to do it 26,000 more years until they have to ascend. So the important thing to leave this with is really be accountable, step into your accountability and into your power as a divine child of God, as a child of God, and connected to God at all times, because the education systems, the governments, and the religions have gone out of their way to separate you from God and from each other. We need to all come together as one collective consciousness of brothers and sisters. We're all children of God. I talk about that in my book about who you are. We are all children of God, equal children of God. None of us are better. I'm not better than you. You're not better than me. Even the angels don't think they're better than us, because we are all created by the same loving, unconditional loving source that is God. God is unconditional love. And so you need to be accountable for everything that you say, everything that you do from this point forward. And the only way you will ascend is you have to be loving, you have to be kind, you have to be compassionate, you have to be forgiving, you have to be patient, you have to be respectful to every living creature, every animal, every human. You have to be respectful. And if you can't do those things, you will not ascend. You will not. What will happen instead is you'll be sent off into another body, into another third density, because this planet is going into 5D. Anybody who's not ready to go into 5D because they want to be a nasty person, they don't want to be a loving person, they will be leaving. They'll be leaving through the thing in the arm. They'll be leaving through the plague thing that's going around the planet. They'll be leaving with car accidents, heart attacks, plane crashes, train crashes, whatever, their neighbor strangling them, whatever. They will be out of here. So, that's my big warning.
Well, that's because we are loving, compassionate people, and we don't want to be leave it on a fear-based note. We're going to leave it on the fact that we're going to come back and talk about what life will be like, in that future as we do ascend, and what are the things we can do to, help us in that transition, in that process. So you laid down the roadmap of what Ascension 101 really is. It's a roadmap for your soul. It's your book, and your website is spiritualgrowthjourneys.com. I encourage people to go there, take a look, buy the book, read the book, start the process, and then come back and join us the next time we get together and have another conversation. How does that sound, Kimberly?
Sounds good. And I wasn't trying to be fear-based. I'm just saying the people who are fear-based are not going to like it here, because we're not fear-based. That's the thing.
No, that's right.
We're love-based. So it's about getting out of fear and getting into a place of love, getting into your heart space, sinking into your heart space. So anyways, I just want to point that out.
And I just wanted to let you know that I'm like, because there are no coincidences, I had to define what Gumption was about 10 years ago. And I was developing my speaking and my message and professional evolution post Forrest Gump for the Bubba Gump restaurant. And I said, I'm going to be a speaker and I'm going to talk about personal responsibility. And someone told me, no one will ever pay you to talk about personal responsibility. This was terrible advice, but it turned out to be okay, because I said, okay, well, I'm going to redefine Gumption to mean personal responsibility for the way you think, the way you act, and the way you interact with others. And it's really all about what we're talking about with that.
I love that.
Yeah, it's your thoughts, actions, and interactions with others. So
yes.
it's
And it's true. And, none of my videos I do on my YouTube channel are ever fear-based. I don't ever put out any fear information, but I will speak the truth. And I won't put up with people who are nasty people. I don't put up with them. I'm not going to put up with abuse. I don't put up with people leaving rude comments or saying that I'm crazy or I'm this or that or whatever. They can take their rude comments somewhere else because it lowers my vibration. So, so that, it's important to just stay in a place of love. That's just my final word, is just stay in a place of love, and you will, you want to get close to God, right? And God is unconditional love. So you have to be love. Just try to be as unconditionally loving as you can. And that just gets you closer and closer to God. And that's the important word about that. So,
all righty. Well, thank you, Kimberly. We'll end this conversation, but we'll come back and continue it because you have more to teach, and I have more questions, and I think it's a fun conversation. I love your energy, and I just want to say thank you for being that voice of love and light that we need at this particular time. So thanks so much.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks for having me on your show. I appreciate you. And I appreciate all the the work you're doing out there in the community and the light that you're shedding too. So just keep doing the work that you're doing, because it's awesome.
All righty. Well, thank you. Yeah, it's fun. It's like suddenly it's getting crystal clear that I'm on a mission here, and I appreciate you and Victoria and all of the people that are doing this work and introducing me to others that that I haven't met yet, that I will be meeting, and it's a fun time. It is a fun time to be alive. So.
It is. It's exciting. Very entertaining too.
We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
All righty. Thank you, Kimberly. That was fantastic. What a great conversation that we had as she described her book, Ascension 101. And so really we're going to have Kimberly back in a couple of weeks, and we'll continue that conversation. But this was really she laid down a great foundation of what Ascension is, and what the planet is going through, and what the levels of consciousness are going through. So there was a lot there. I'm excited. I'm going to go back and listen a second time and a third time, because I need to sort out everything that she was teaching this morning. All righty. Well, that's it. It's the end of the week for us. Let's see. We have two Sarahs coming up next week on Tuesday. Sarah Johnson. We're going to talk about building a website. Now, that's not something we typically talk here, but Sarah is a heart-based business owner, along with her husband, Johnny. And I worked on, they helped me with my website, and I worked on a project and where I was the project manager, and they were the developer. And so we're just going to talk about what it takes to build a good website, but how to build a heart-based website. So that's going to be Tuesday. And then Sarah, the other Sarah, is Sarah Sparks on Friday, Amplify Your Inner Wisdom. And that's really going to be probably a little bit similar to what Victoria, or I'm sorry, what Kimberly and I talked about this morning. And it's just a matter of how do we get to know that inner truth of what it is. That's the challenge that we're all facing. So as many different teachers as we can bring on to help people with that. That's what we're going to do here. So again, see you next week with the Sarahs, Sarah Johnson on Tuesday, Sarah Sparks on Friday. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you next week.